So Riftbound has been out for approximately 3 weeks now. How have they done so far? Well, we're going to be looking into release day, how it is getting boxes and products, the online market, as well as erratas, judge systems, all of that and more, starting right now. Yeah, so this is going to be, of course, my own opinions and thoughts on how I believe Riot did with the release of Riftbound, and we are going to be critiquing and going into everything that they have done well as what they could maybe improve on, especially as we get further and further into these future sets. Now, that's going to be something that is a little bit maybe difficult to do, and I'm definitely curious on hearing your guys' own thoughts and opinions on all of this as well. Now, first and foremost, at least before the release, they did actually a really good job on getting everything out to us, at least information-wise. I remember seeing an article from even like 3 months before the game released, where even Dave was saying things along the lines of when to expect the first worlds to be, when they were going to be doing the first rotations and things of that. Of course, all those dates were theorized, around 2028 and things of that nature, around basically set 10, which is pretty standard for a lot of trading card games. But that was also something that was really refreshing for me, especially coming from other TCGs as well, to be able to see that right off the bat, Riot's like, hey guys, guess what? Here we go. This is what we are planning and what we are feeling so far. And I was like, whoo, sign me up. And I mean, this was even before any of the cards were necessarily revealed. The 3 trial decks that you were going to be able to try, were revealed, and that was basically it. So we only knew Victor, Jinx, and Volibear at that point, which was pretty exciting. Now, from that point on, things just continued to grow, and the hype of that, at least for those who are already excited for the pre-release, were getting into it. I mean, as cards were being released, Willow was updating Tabletop Simulator, likewise, Piltover Archive was updating cards as quickly as they could, and both were working hand in hand so that you could then go ahead and play these cards online on Tabletop Simulator, and then from that even spewed the ability to play tournaments. And I mean, gosh, I remember Riftbound meta even starting like Wednesday night tournaments as cards were being released, and there were literally only about 20 cards outside of the structure decks that were released, but we were already so excited, and it had only grown from there. I mean, we've seen a lot of people come into this sphere even from that, as we got closer to the release of the game. And I mean, we even had the Rift Lab trials where we had over 100 people competing over the course of 2 days, being able to then test out their deck theories and things of that nature, because at that time we only had the ideas of what China was able to do with their regionals at that point, and even then that was only a handful of games really that were out. The first regional came and went, and I mean, you're looking at a completely different Master Yi than the Master Yis that we even have right now with that deck tech, and so it's come a long way. I mean, we even were looking at the Snapvine, for example, as being a staple in the first regionals for China, and a lot of us were playing that version of the deck over. And it wasn't even until the second regional where we started playing Aurora Yi, and then realizing, well, as long as you're actually prepared for Aurora Yi, it's good, but not necessarily unbeatable in this case. And so some really interesting dynamics with the deck creation as well. But again, we were just so enthralled with it as a whole, wanting to go ahead and get into this game. One thing that was interesting was there was a lot of online stores that were doing pre-releases on products, or like pre-sales on products, not pre-releases, pre-sales and whatnot, and they were able to go ahead and sell at about $120, though it was a little shady on, not necessarily shady, but it was unknown on how much allocation they were able to get. And so a lot of those orders ended up canceling when the game ended up releasing. Now, first and foremost, Riot's first pre-sale of boxes. Woo, that was a doozy. I remember being a part of that website, bogged down completely. You were trying to get a box in your cart. It was failing, it was failing, it was failing, it was failing, and then finally it would go through successfully. and they were sold out. There was no way for you to be able to purchase that. That was really sad because we already were feeling that there was going to be a scarcity of boxes of product that was going to be out and about. And then for all of a sudden the online market on the Riot website to go poof, that really sucked. Wasn't necessarily something that we were looking forward to there, and that did already start to ruffle a couple of feathers in the community, and rightfully so. You know, it's like, well, is this going to be how hard this product is going to be to get? That we just go online and then all of a sudden, like, it's just gone and we're not going to get a chance? That, hey, the bots, the scalpers, and things of that nature are just going to be able to take this product from us and then sell it back to us at a premium? And we were hoping that that wasn't going to be the case. Now, my experience locally is going to be a lot different than maybe what you experienced, but still there are going to be some similarities. And I did talk with a couple of friends before filming this around the United States to get their feedback and how everything went for them as well. Now, my local game store actually did a pretty good job at being able to get product. There was a lot of people who ended up able to get their boxes. We had a store that had 50 boxes for pre-sale, limiting one per person, even to the point of showing ID upon pickup, which is, you know, definitely something to look forward to, but a little disheartening if you're like, well, I want to get even like 3 boxes just because I feel like this is going to be scarce and whatnot. And so maybe a little disheartening there, but all the same, really good to be able to see. And so was able to go ahead and do that. There were other game stores, of course, that even went and they were like, if you go to our release event and whatnot, we have like 35 boxes, and those are going to be first come, first serve if you actually signed up and played all 3 rounds of our release event. Okay, cool. That's fine. I totally get that. And then likewise, finally, the others were just like, yeah, we're just doing first come, first serve, limited to 1 box per person. Now, Utah, of course, is definitely a very nerdy state in general. I mean, we have a theme park that is based on fantasy stuff alone. So pretty fun to see that kind of stuff. Anyway, and so we have a ton of game stores, all that we're able to go ahead and get product. There's other people who are like, well, my closest game store is 30-45 minutes away, and they're not even running Riftbound. I want to still play this game. I still want to be able to collect here, and what am I able to do to be able to get my hands on this product? And unfortunately, they weren't necessarily able to. And even when this game did release, trying to go online and buy prices, I mean, we saw, you know, on that Saturday, the boxes were at the lowest price after release at about $179, was about the lowest that I saw it. And then that Sunday, November 2nd, for some reason, it skyrocketed. Everything skyrocketed. We saw Thousand Tail Watcher go from $15 to $35. We saw a Cathian Rain go from $38 to $60. We saw Time Warp going from $40 to $80. Dead Bloom Predator going from $55 to $100. You know, things of that nature. And the prices have not come down since. And so that caused us a little bit of panic, and we're like, whoa, what's going to be going on here? What are we going to be expecting with all of this? I mean, we're looking around, and first off, all the game stores have run out of product. If you weren't able to get it in the first couple of days, or especially the first day, then you weren't just necessarily going to be able to get it. I know that the game store that I was able to get one of the 50 boxes, you know, they had some product, and they're just like, look, we're selling these packs. You're limited to 3 per day. But after that, that's it. There's going to be literally no more. And that's like, okay, cool. So, you know, you were able to get ones until about Tuesday, after the game had released on that Friday. And after that, they have not been able to sell products ever since. Now, they, of course, had their proving grounds that they were able to go ahead and use. But the biggest thing with that was that they were not going to be using them as being able to be sold as all 4, but instead they turned it into an event where you could go ahead and show up, pay $9. You'd get one of the decks at random, and if you showed up for all 4 weeks, you'd get all 4 decks. That sold out about 3 days before the first event. All 4 of them sold out before the first event. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how that'll end up going. So on top of that, of course, we're going to be talking a little bit later on how hard Proving Grounds has been to get as well. But I want to take a step back and talk about the release day. Now, I don't know how it went for the rest of you guys, but for us at least, again, product was pretty easy to get as long as you were prepared and able to travel around. You were able to get your 2 to 3 boxes at that point. I was able to go ahead and get 2 boxes, which was really helpful. Now, the biggest thing was the release event was actually really successful in a couple of ways and pretty horrible in another way, but in a funny way, at least, you know. With the release event in and of itself, it was really interesting because it sold out. We had about 32 people that were able to sell out. That was able to attend both events. We had one at 3 and one at 7. You would then get a structure deck and you would be able to pick online which structure deck you actually wanted. I picked Victor and Lee Sin for the 3 o'clock and the 7 o'clock objectively. Whatever. Imagine I said that word right. Anyway, but with that, both events actually ended up being sold out. Now, it was really fun because you'd get the pack in the box and then you would get 2 backpacks given to you at the game store. And that was for a $30 price mark, which, you know, that's actually pretty dang good. The hard part with that was it was very hit and miss on what you would actually get. With my Victor deck, I didn't necessarily get a whole lot of good cards to necessarily help out, but enough that I was able to at least upgrade it some. Likewise with Lee Sin, I ended up pulling like 2 Zonia's Hourglasses and a Tasty Fey Folk and things like that. So my deck was built at that point and I was able to just go ahead and run it. So really interesting right there. But it was funny because the biggest mistake that we actually ended up making was round 1 of the first event was supposed to be a best of 3. And the whole event actually was supposed to be best of 3. And 50 minutes ended up passing. And like 80% of the group was in game 1. And they were like, okay, well, go to turns. And then from that point on, they're like, hey, guys, we're just playing best of 1. And that was a little bit alarming because I was just like, you know, I don't necessarily know if I want to, you know, do this or anything because, or well, not necessarily do this, but it's like you get a pack per win. I already felt like there were going to be a scarcity in packs, and it's like, well, I want to be able to build my deck up as quickly as possible so I can get practicing for Vegas, which is in 3 weeks, which is now this weekend. But with that, it was like I need to be able to get as many packs as I can. I opened my 2 boxes. My friend Lancet ended up opening his case as well. We didn't pull a single Kaisa, we didn't pull a single Aurora or Dead Bloom. And we're just like, what? That's scary. I was able to pull a Time Warp. I was happy about that. Now, with that being said though, this was scary because luckily one of my friends did end up pulling a Kaisa. He wasn't using it with his deck. He was playing Victor. If he would have had Jinx, he would have probably used it for the event, and rightfully so. But it was really intense, at least because I bought it off of him. It was the Altart Kaisa, bought it off of him for $60 right there, kind of thing. And so I was like, I just need 1 Kaisa to be able to build my deck. Now, the rest of the release event actually went really well, and I loved the reception of the game. There was a lot of people who are like, this is my first time actually ever playing this game, and that's exactly why the games ended up going so long. And there was a guy who was like, you know, I play a lot of Hearthstone, I play a lot of stuff in general, and, you know, once I understand the game, I get you know, addicted to it, and I know the strategy and stuff, but I'm just here to really enjoy this game. And that was really the sentiment in general with all of this, which was such a joy to be able to see that everyone was just really wanting to experience a game. Now, the bad part was that the cards did get errated right before release, 30 plus cards in that case. And there was a couple of cards where people were just like, haha, this is what this card actually means. Let me actually pull. Oh yeah, so there was Convergent Mutation and someone was playing it and they were able to go ahead and make one of their 1 might units up to a 6 might unit because they were playing Victor and they had a Cruel Patron out. Awesome. That's good to know. But the hard part is that card was errated, and it originally said choose a friendly unit, increase its might until it equals the might of another friendly unit. Reading that card, even though it is a spell, they thought, that means for the rest of the game, my 1 might becomes a 6 might. But unfortunately, the card was errated at that point, and it is until the end of turn. And so that is a big difference maker. But of course, reading the card, they're like, well, it stays forever. And, the judge ended up having to correct them on that, saying, actually, it is just until end of turn. That is what it is meant to be said and how the card is supposed to be working. And because of that, that's how it works here. And she was a little bit mad about that. But I gotta say, I was just really impressed by a bunch of all the people. Everyone was so helpful to each other. We were there just to learn the game. I was helping people build and upgrade their deck, saying, hey, maybe think about taking out these cards, maybe think about putting these cards in, or whatever it might be, just because for a lot of people, it was their first time, and that is a lot, rightfully so. Now, all in all, very excited about how that release event went. Such a blast. I'm really curious to see how this next event is going to go as well, because we're going to finally be able to have pre-release events, and that will be really fun to be able to experience as well. And I'm excited to see what that is going to be in store for us. So really exciting stuff to be able to see there. Going to be excited, especially as we get more stuff revealed in the coming weeks. Now, with that, of course, the pricing of the market. This is rough. Because a lot of things just feel really out of reach. You're looking at the Dead Bloom Predators. Yay, that's great. You're looking at, the Protectors, all these things that you're wanting to be able to play in Master Yi, and you're just like, yeah, not able to play it because I'm not spending $600 on 3 cards, give or take. Slight exaggeration, you get what I mean. And that has been something that's been very hard because it's pushed a lot of people away from the game. I mean, I do market watch videos every Sunday, and it is so sad because they are like, I can't stay in this market. I can't stay in this game with how crazy things are. And I just can't stay here. It's horrible. And it's like, yes, I totally get that. We're 2 weeks into this game being released. We're 3 weeks now into this game being released. Yes, the pricing really does suck. Don't get me wrong on that. I don't want to pay $80 for a Kaisa card. I don't want to pay $100 for a Time Warp by any means. And I get it. I don't want to have to do that, but that's sometimes just how it is. And you go ahead and you play the budget stuff. You play the cards that are a little bit cheaper in that case that still get kind of close to the same power, but not really. And then you just wait, And it's tough because, there's been a lot of times where, these card games have really missed the allocation for the market. And I feel like, even, without including the scalpers and collectors and things of that nature, the people who are trying to play this game, especially in America, at least, I don't know about the rest of the world, but in America, seems to be far exceeding what Riot initially thought was going to be the case. And rightfully so. It's like, how are you going to be able to predict all of this? And I think they severely underestimated how many people were going to be a part of this. And the market has just exploded because of that. Now, at the same time, I do think that the reason for even higher prices at that point as well is going to be the fact that we have a Houston Regionals literally a month and a half after the game has already released. So we have over 1,000 people that are trying to go ahead and build meta decks, going with Yi, going with all that. Kaisa, whatever else you're going to want to bring, and that alone is going to bring up the pricing market. If you're going with Teemo, cool, well, Thousand Tail Watchers are expensive. Same if you're building Kaisa, because you guys are using a lot of the same cards. Ari, same thing, and all these color combinations have a lot of similarities in what you are going to be using, and that can be very difficult for you to be able to go ahead and utilize it and build the decks that you want properly. That's hard. And I totally get that. I still feel like that this market will come down, but with the caveat on how well Wave 2 and beyond are going to be able to successfully be handled. And we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the future. Now, with that though, we got some bad cuts. We also got some missing rares, and we also have even shipping delays and lack of proving grounds. Now, first and foremost, with the bad cut cards, that's a little disheartening. Now, I totally get what they mean. They've talked about it. I'll link the article down below on how they were able to discuss it. You're going to be getting cards that are going to have a little bit of frayed edges. You know, they're not going to be as crisply cut. The reason for that, of course, as they have explained, is that they are using thicker cards here, and rightfully so. They are very durable, luckily, and that's awesome to be able to see. You're going to get a card with foiling and things of that nature, and it's not going to just bend just because it's out of a sleeve, or even if it's in a sleeve and it still bends. Thanks, Magic. Anyway, with that, you know, because it is a thicker card stock that they are using, it is going to cause the blades to start to get duller quicker, and that was something they didn't necessarily anticipate. Because of that, some of the cards, a lot of the cards, are going to be frayed. Now, they also explain that this is going to be the same issue that is going to be happening in set 2 as well, which means that a lot of these, or pretty much all the boxes that were allocated for set 2, at least from the get-go, are already done, printed, and sealed and getting ready for shipping, you know, at this point. At least for, especially for China, but more so for America as well, from the sounds of it. That's a theory, not necessarily confirmed, but it makes sense that if set 2 is already going to be having these issues, that set 2 is already completely printed, at least for wave 1, and sealed at that point and ready to go. So things to keep in mind with that. And also with that is going to be the missing rares. Now, this is really where a lot of people are having their gripes with Riot as well, outside of the card market. And I totally get where you guys are coming from with that, because the missing rares, it's like, well, I'm supposed to get 2 rares and I got 1. Thanks a lot. And they're like, well, what you need to do is you need to, you know, get us the pack cover, or the plastic cover and everything, get us the cards order and everything, send it to us, or, you know, send us a picture of all of that, and we'll replace up to 3 of those packs. And it's like, well, of the 2 boxes that I ended up opening, I had like maybe 6 packs that were missing their rares, you know, give or take. And it's like, oh, excuse me though, if you're only going to replace 3, and it seems like you're only going to replace those 3, if I'm able to then go ahead and prove, you know, from memory even, because I didn't keep any of this in order, you know, and you're then going to send me a random rare at that point, and it's like, no, thank you. That seems like you're really just trying to gouge us a little bit here. And it's like, yes, kinda, not really though. I'm sad that, yeah, that's a very difficult solution to be able to put out at that point, especially when some people have lost more than 3 packs at that point. But at the same time, I am still very grateful that they're at least trying to fix it. At that point for me, it's like, look, even though I recorded all of my pack openings, I know which ones with, you know, video recording proof, that are, you know, that I could send in the video for 3 packs to get the 3 rares replaced. Cool, you know, but at the same time, I'm just counting it as a loss for me. It's not really worth the time and effort for that. But I am still grateful that Riot is like, look, guys, we messed up in this case. We're going to do our best to try to make it right. And I mean, that's going to be a lot of money out of their own pocket on trying to make it right as well. Yes, still, definitely, you're very valid in being able to be angry about, you know, missing out on the rares and something, especially with the scarcity of everything. But at the same time, I still am very happy that Riot is trying to make the best of a poor situation. And, you know, that effort that they are putting in speaks volumes to me, and I am so grateful that they are able to do so and that they are willing to do so. That was one of the biggest things about all of this as well, was that Riot 2 weeks after was coming out and saying, hey guys, this is how we feel the release went. This is where there are issues. This is what we are trying to fix. And it was like, dude, thank you for being able to communicate to us with that. And even some people were angry and being like, it's been 2 weeks. What do you mean that you're just now communicating to us about this? And and they had their gripes. And it's like, well, are those people ever actually going to be happy with any news that Riot's going to be able to give them at this point? Probably not. But, I'm just so grateful that we actually do have a trading card company that is willing to at least talk to us and even say, hey guys, we messed up here, but this is our solutions. They came out with the missing rares. They said wave 2 is going to be better for Origins on the bad cuts. Set 2 is still going to be bad for the bad cuts until wave 2 of that. And things of that nature. They're going to be working on the lack of product with wave 2 and wave 3 and things of that nature for Origins and trying to put out a regular order. And they're focusing on getting those out to your local game stores so that the scalpers and things of that nature aren't going to necessarily have as much of an online prevalence, especially being able to go ahead and just have bots or even just their efforts to order so many boxes right off the bat from any online sale. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff is going to be resolved here, but it's going to be tough because it's not going to be coming until end of December, early January. And at that, we're going to be waiting and seeing, because it's like, well, if it's kind of a half effort or not able to get out as much as the market currently needs, we're just going to create a problem. Yes, prices are probably going to come down a little bit, but the market is still going to be incredibly competitive as we try to continue to gain product and build the decks that we want. And that's going to be hard because especially on the next year, we're going to be having a lot more events that are going to be happening as well. And it's going to be like, well, what do we do about this? How are we going to go about getting product from here on out? And it's like, guys, trust the system, trust in Riot at least a little bit, And they've still done a lot of really great things. I'm very happy to be a part of this and, ride this wave. It's a very choppy wave, don't get me wrong, but it's one that, is still very exciting. It's still a great game, and they're at least trying to resolve these concerns. Now, the tough part with the lack of scarcity is they need to knock out wave 2, or they need to knock it out of the park. And I hope that they do, because right now we have resellers that are selling cases, so 6 boxes, for $1,400 to $1,600. So between $200 and $300 for a box. And you're seeing the same prices reflected on TCG Player as well. And it's like, oh my gosh, so if I want product, or worse, the freaking Proving Grounds being sold for near $200 on TCG Player and on Facebook alike. That's insane. Now, one thing that's really difficult too is that they also said that there was a lack of Proving Grounds, unfortunately. And, that sucks, especially when 2 of the decks are actually very meta relevant. This was a box that was originally supposed to be not necessarily meta relevant. It was supposed to be an intro, and they actually ended up creating 2 of the best decks in the game. The number 2 deck and, definitely an A tier deck with Annie. So, gosh, it's tough, and that is very tough as well, especially when they put in exclusive cards such as Flash, which is such a good card, and it is a common that is going for $35. It maxed out at about $42, and it's like, why are we paying $42? Now, of course, Riot did come out and say, hey guys, just so you know, we are going to be reprinting these in prize packs and things of that nature, so that in this next set, you're going to be able to go ahead and pick this stuff up. And it's like, okay, cool. That's awesome. Glad to see that. But at the same time, that's still going to be 2.5, 3 months out. And even then, that's going to be at a rarity kind of thing where it's like, well, hopefully I can pull that from the pack and we'll see what ends up happening with that. So time will tell. But they also haven't necessarily announced that they are going to be printing out any more proving grounds, and that's going to be tough as well. It's been very scarce here. We had one store up in Bountiful, which is like an hour and 10 minutes away from me, that had some proving grounds at MSRP, which is awesome. Good for you guys on being able to do that. We have the store just down the street from me that also went ahead and had their proving grounds, and they did the event that we talked about earlier. But otherwise, proving grounds has been incredibly rare and very hard to come by, to the point where people who are wanting to play Master Yi, or Annie for that matter, are now trying to pay, $160 to $200 for that. And unfortunately, Riot hasn't announced anything beyond what they are expecting with the prize packs and things of that nature coming in set 2 to be able to give you guys these cards. That's tough. I, for one of my favorite decks to be able to play in this set 1 is Annie. And it could very well be that Annie ends up falling more to the wayside come set 2. So by the time I finally get the cards to be able to play this, I have the cards, but I'm talking for other people at least. By the time I get these cards to be able to play Annie or Master Yi or whatever, they might not be meta relevant anymore. And it's just like, what? I missed that train just because, you as Riot messed up on the product allocations and I wasn't able to get my hands on one, and I get where the gripes are with that, and it sucks. And I mean, the Proving Grounds is probably the number one thing that I am most agitated with. Now, luckily, if you did get the pre-order, it was on pre-order for a long time on the Riot website, probably a good 3.5 months. But if someone just found out about this game, wanted to pick up the Proving Grounds, well, too bad it's already sold out on Riot's website. That was also kind of a hard thing too, was the fact that they had the shipping delays. And so there were people who are finally starting to get the boxes that they ordered from Riot, or like me, the Proving Grounds. They did come out and say the 2 weeks after, in that article that Dave wrote, that they were going to be shipping everything out at the end of last week. And yeah, as far as I know, they were able to actually fulfill all of that, which is good on them. I was able to get the shipping notification for the deck that I ordered, as well as the Proving Grounds, and good on Riot for being able to fulfill that promise. Still though, lack of Proving Grounds really sucks. And I hate to see that kind of stuff. Hopefully they are able to go ahead and get that going, but I just don't necessarily see how that will end up going. So the final 2 points that I want to bring up, we've talked about this a little bit, but Wave 2 and beyond needs to be successful. I'm not talking about set 2 with Spirit Forge. Wave 2 of Origins needs to be knocked out of the park. The allocations and even just the constant feeding of these boxes need to go successfully. We need to get these packs into the hands of consumers so that alone can drive down the prices immensely. The fact that just a regular rare is going, Thousand Tail Watcher, though there is a high demand, is going for $44 is a little outrageous. 15 to 20, reasonable, but 44 is absolutely insane. And we even saw common cards, uncommon cards. We saw Stacked Deck, for example, going up to about $9 for an uncommon. And that is a little bit outrageous in and of itself. And so it's like, well, let's see how that ends up going. But time, of course, will tell. I still want to have my faith put in Riot. With the track record and everything, yes, it has been a bumpy road, but I still am trusting them. This is still a great game. Product has been hard, but that's how it is for multiple of set 1 releases. That product is just hard to get. Gundam was doing the same exact thing, and they had a scarcity. And they even had like their structure decks that they were having released that had staple cards in it, much like a Proving Grounds. And you weren't able to get it. But if you wanted to build a meta deck, you had to get that structure deck. And it was like, well, too bad. And that scarcity was something very difficult to try to get under control as well. And that's why I really hope that Riot is able to get Wave 2 going successfully. we need these prices to drop. You know, I'm okay with a couple of premium prices on certain cards. Sure, that's just normal. It's still not nearly as expensive as like Flesh and Blood and Yu-Gi-Oh for that matter. I remember trying to build Pendulum deck, and I had to spend $60 on 3 cards to be able to, you know, build out the core of my deck. You know, that was really hard as well. Or $60 on 4 cards, I think. I forget how much Yu-Gi-Oh has. It's been too long. But with that, you know, and that was a normal price. And even hand traps going for near 100 because they're secret rares. Anyway, we could go on with that. I really do think that Riot is going to be able to correct a lot of this. I really do think that they're going to be able to give us the products enough that we are able to then go ahead and drop the prices down to where this is much more manageable. Now, set 1 very well might be in a lot of ways a little bit of a wash for a couple of people that weren't necessarily able to get their product, that by the time they're able to come mid-January, well, set 2 comes out in February. You know, that, and it's just like, oh gosh, okay, well, here we go. You know, I didn't necessarily get to play set 1. And it's like, yeah, that really does suck, you know, and it's like, just, you know, definitely be patient. It feels like Riot does really care about the consumer. They have stated that they do want this to be a lower cost TCG game. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like $5 to $10 cards for everything, you know. Not by any means. That's wishful thinking, you know, kind of thing, and kind of unrealistic. But the fact that they do want this to be an affordable trading card game speaks volumes, and it seems like they are putting in the effort to make that happen. Time will tell. But again, as of right now, I am putting that trust in Riot and hoping that they are able to do things. That's not to say that I'm not a little bit agitated with how things have been handled. We've talked about those gripes that I've felt so far, you know, but still, I have that hope. Now, we'll see how this ends up going, but I am very excited. I love this game. I can't wait to see how Vegas goes this weekend. I can't wait to see how the Houston Regionals ends up going. I'm not going to be able to attend, unfortunately. I wish I could. Just haven't been able to get that ticket, and I'm very sad about that, but that happens, you know. I'm curious to see what is going to be the future of Riftbound, but right now the future still looks bright. All in all, though, I still think that with how everything has been going, this is still going to be given like a C, you know, a C plus kind of thing. I still feel like Riot has done a lot of things right so far. Love the communication. Love how the launch was still able to go, though it was a little bit shaky. You know, but they were still able to go ahead and get a lot of products. The cards that they were able to put into the set 1 are amazing. They're so dynamic, and we already have a very well fleshed out meta, even though this is set 1, and they could have played it very safe and, you know, taken that step back, and it could have been a much more mundane game, but they pushed that boundary and made a very dynamic set 1. So, I mean, just with how the game feels in and of itself really boosts that grade, because, man, it is a fun game. You're going against a Lee Sin, and you got to prepare for certain things. You're going against an Annie, and it's a completely different ball game. You know, it's so dynamic on how to go about everything, and so fun to be able to see. I can't wait to see what is in store for the rest of this. It is such an exciting time. Now, again, we will see what our future holds, but man, I am excited. So how do you think that Riot ended up going with this launch and so far in this set 1? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, guys, have a good one.